What is going on, my friends? I'm Jason Huggins, the Real Cool Guy, and today we're going to be talking about one of my all-time favorite tools that is near and dear to my heart, and that is EQ. If you don't have time to watch this whole video and you just want to know which EQ I like, well, here it is. Drum roll, please. iZotope's Neutron. It's really a rock star plugin that goes way beyond just being an EQ and is instead an all-in-one mixing suite that streamlines my workflow. Now, if you've got a bit of time and you would like to stick around, I would love to tell you why and how I use it. There are a few primary ways that I like to use EQ in my productions, and they are, first, to fine-tune the voice. I will use EQ to ensure that the voice and the music aren't fighting over frequencies and that the VO sits nicely in the context of the project. Here is a big note. I typically do not EQ my voiceovers when I am not the one doing the mixing. I'm going to repeat that. I do not EQ my own voiceovers when I am sending them to someone else to mix. Okay, let the sound designer do that. You don't know the context. They do. That's likely the case. Next, I like to use a dynamic EQ, meaning one that is sometimes applied and sometimes not to deal with things like sibilance. So I'm not just cutting out all those frequencies from the entire signal all the time. I will often, most of the time, use dynamic EQ instead of a de-esser, a designated de-esser, because it's just more effective for me personally. And lastly, I will use opposing EQ on competing audio signals. This usually involves lowering select frequencies from the music while simultaneously boosting the same frequencies in the voiceover. And doing this prevents the voice from getting buried in the music, and it also makes it so that you can do minor tweaks to the EQ rather than having like these huge sweeping cuts. Now, throughout my career, I have had the pleasure of experimenting with a bunch of different EQ plugins, and while they all primarily serve the same fundamental purpose, the differences in speed and features and effectiveness that can be there from one to the next can be significant. So among the plethora of options available, there is one plugin that has consistently stood out to me and has become my go-to EQ, and that is iZotope's Neutron. As I mentioned earlier, I specifically use Neutron 4 right now, and ultimately I use Neutron because it's massively powerful and feature-packed and intuitively laid out and consistently gives me good sound, which is the most important thing. It does everything I mentioned earlier, so I don't need multiple plugins. I can just use Neutron. Neutron is not just your average EQ plugin. It is actually part of a comprehensive mixing suite. The plugin consists of a mothership plugin that contains 7 distinct modules, all of which can function as standalone plugins by themselves, which is great. And while I will primarily focus on the EQ section in this video, Neutron 4 has a ton of features that go well beyond EQ that are worth exploring. In the single-track environment, Neutron is an absolute powerhouse. It is laid out as a parametric EQ. It allows you to add up to 12 frequency nodes, adjust the amplitude of those frequencies, and fine-tune the width of the frequency band that is known as the Q. Each one of those nodes can function as either a standalone standard EQ band or a dynamic EQ band, and hopefully I'm not getting too technical here, but the dynamic EQ can be used with a sidechain. Sidechain basically just means that the threshold for the dynamic EQ can be triggered by an external source, which lets you get really precise in controlling the frequencies. Now, one thing that makes Neutron even cooler for voiceover work is that not only is it a top-notch EQ, but it also has some pretty stellar AI built in. This AI will let you automate the selection of frequencies, and while it may not always be flawless, it serves as a pretty good starting point for audio enhancement. Now, where Neutron really shines, though, is in the multitrack environment. And whenever I'm working on a project that has both music and voice, I will add Neutron to every single channel I'm working on, and I label the instance for voice as voice, and I label the instance for music as music, or whatever makes sense for the context of my mix. After you get those labels in, then you know which is which. And in masking, this drop-down box here, if you select a different track containing a Neutron instance from that menu, and then you play back audio, it will give you this really cool representation of where frequencies are competing. So at this point, you can either reduce the frequencies in the music just to create space, or you can opt for the inverse link feature, which automatically applies an opposing EQ, which I mentioned earlier, so that any adjustments made on one signal are made to the other, just the inverse. For example, reducing specific frequencies in the music will increase the same frequencies with the same cue in the voiceover. What's more, you don't need to jump back and forth between multiple windows while you're EQing, because as you can see right here, whatever you have selected in the masking dropdown is highlighted down at the bottom, and all you have to do is click between the two so you can make changes on either one while you're doing it. As you can plainly see, the interface is super streamlined and makes it really easy to fine-tune the interplay between audio signals. Now, although we primarily only talked about the EQ section, Neutron's EQ section, it's worth mentioning that Neutron offers additional modules such as compressors, exciters, transient shapers, sculptors, gates. You can mess with all of these things, and an especially useful module called Unmask. When you connect instances of Neutron via the masking dropdown, and then you add an Unmask module to the chain, you can create a dynamic EQ that intelligently lowers and raises all the frequencies where they clash. And this is going to be a really complex dynamic EQ that it applies automatically. If you use it too heavily, it will sound very unnatural, but if you keep the sensitivity and the mix percentage at a reasonable level, you can automate much of the mixing of music and voiceover. So start with a little unmask and then add EQ to fine tune it a little bit. Just don't overdo it because you are really striving for a natural sound. For me, iZotope's Neutron 4 is a game changer. It really lumps together pretty much everything you need to mix VO and music together into one plugin. Add in the AI, and this really becomes a crazy powerful workhorse plugin. So whether you're a media producer or an engineer or a voice actor, Neutron 4 is a massively versatile tool that can streamline your workflow. Now, as a side note, if you're eager to get your hands on Neutron and the other fantastic tools that iZotope produces, without breaking the bank, here's a strategy to snag some great deals. So the first thing you're going to do is you're going to create an iZotope and Sweetwater account, and you're going to sign up for their sale emails. Also, you're going to want to grab one of the free tools from iZotope, like Audio Lens or Vinyl. It doesn't matter. You're doing this so that you are seen by iZotope as a customer who has purchased something in the past and someone who is eligible for loyalty offers. Just keep an eye on the sales, and when Black Friday or Christmas roll around, you will likely see a good Elements bundle, usually from Sweetwater, for around $29. I've seen it for as low as $9. So snag that and start watching your inbox for upgrade offers from iZotope. Your purchase path is probably going to come down to what you need. I personally got Elements for $9, upgraded to the iZotope Music Production Suite for like $2.99, and then got the Everything Bundle for $1.99 when it was on sale. It took a little bit of time, but that's like $2,500 worth of tools for just over $500, and Neutron 4 alone is $3.99 without being on sale. So, like I said, I can't guarantee these prices, but with patience, I'm pretty sure you can get some stellar tools at a good price. Hopefully this was helpful for you. Please like and subscribe, and make sure to leave comments below. Best of luck on your journey to audio excellence.